Hello and welcome to a pretty special video. I'm joined here by Fire Kahuna, one of the developers on MEIOU Taxes, which, 3.0 is released to a few YouTubers like my lucky self. I thought I'd do a video with one of the devs and see what's new in this new version. So, hello.
Hello, good day. Good to be here.
It is a good day for sure. So what do you do on MEIOU Taxes before we get into what's different?
I've been the head of, I guess, politics for the last 3 years. So we've been building up 3.0, and KGH and I have handled the systems. He's done economy, so I've been generally in charge of politics, although there's been a lot of crisscrossing in terms of responsibilities and stuff. But yeah, I've been mainly developing the political systems and then just helping out where I can.
Awesome, sounds good. So, if I was to show off some of the new systems, what country would be best for me to jump in as, so we could see as much as possible?
Probably the best country would be a feudal nation. Generally, if you want to experience the end of the systems, something like China would be better. If you want to experience the start of the systems, any sort of feudal state, especially France, for example, would be good for that.
All right, I will jump into France then. That's it's not something I'm used to, jumping into France, although I prefer a bit of the English flavor. But it's fine. It's fine. I'll be France for just now. So how long has yeah? How long has 3.0 been in development now then?
Since about mid 2018, I think 2.5 was actually technically meant to be 3.0, but it ended up being 2.5 because we realized what we're coding for 2.5 would have to be completely redone anyway. So we brought what we could to 2.5 and then just moved most of the development onto 3.0.
Lovely. So quite a few man hours and coding and development hours been put into this.
Yeah, a very, very large number.
I do recall back quite a while ago, it was leaked to me that maybe YouTubers would have the opportunity to play the new version soon. I think was the quote that I was given. So I had my wife create a thumbnail for me, and I looked at the properties of that thumbnail a couple of days ago, and it was literally over a year ago that it was made. So it's I've been waiting for 3.0 for quite some time.
Yeah, the only people I think been waiting longer is ourselves to actually have something we're ready to show. It's been cooking for a while. Finally getting towards something resembling an end.
Right. What is faction alignment, I guess, to start with, as I've got this lovely pop-up on my screen?
Oh yes, this is probably one of the more work in progress systems, but basically we've generally split the estates into two sides. You've got the elites, which are more the provincial side of politics, and then you've got the factions, which are more the government side of politics. So faction alignment is that when you have a new ruler, you sort of get a free hand to realign which faction your government will basically be supporting and gaining influence for. And usually when you change advisors, you get a stab hit.
Okay.
So a new alignment is a way to get some really good advisors right from the start, all of one faction.
I guess we can click begin a new alignment so we can see what exactly we can do. And there is the stab hit you were talking about. So aristocrats, metropolitans, spiritualists, and bureaucrats, or you can also align with no one. So what are the difference between all of these then?
For the most part at the moment, it's just in terms of which factions influence you'll gain. So every country has the vanilla factions UI, which has now been populated with new factions.
Yes.
Yeah, they each have a innate influence based on their power. So the main use of these is currently in the government reform system, where if you want to, for example, push pro-noble reforms, you have to have a certain amount of noble influence. So having advisors that pump up that influence can be a way, for example, to get a minority estate into government so you can push reforms that would then empower them.
Okay. So is the reform system still in this one here?
This is probably another one of the more work in progress sides. The reform system, internally we keep mixing them up in terms of saying reforms or rights, but I guess rights is the actual term of the system in game. But rights is mainly in decisions, and there's a state interaction to view your current set. So decisions is where I guess you change the reforms.
Okay.
So rights, and then in the government, the bureaucracy estate, you can see your current rights.
The bureaucracy estate. So go into bureaucrats, and then you can see review rights and reforms, and see all of the quite hefty amount of rights and reforms that all of your various what are these called again? These are your
rights. Would be the
rights from your factions or from your estates, because they're different now, aren't they?
Yeah. So generally, the estate term's been semi-retired. It's mainly used, I guess, referring to the UI. These would mainly impact the elites.
Okay.
They require factions to pass, but they mainly impact the elites.
Okay, so that's a whole new system in and of itself that wasn't in 2.5.
Yes. Yeah, it's basically you can think of rights as the base laws of your nation. They sort of decide the character of it. For example, whether you're almost all the rights work on a sort of pre-modern feudal to early modern axis. So it's like you either go heavily into supporting the elites and empowering them, or you head away from that and towards a stronger bureaucracy and weak elites. So you shift more towards the commoners and the peasantry and the residents.
All right. That sounds deep. Very deep.
Yeah, they interface with both the economy and the politics at every single stage.
So I guess as France, you start off aligned mostly with the aristocrats. As I remember, France was very much controlled by the nobles in this time period.
Yeah, they've got a especially horrible form of feudalism where the vassals can make their own vassals, who can make their own vassals. It's not pretty, as well as the whole seigneury system where nobles can just tax basically for all sorts of things, using mills, cutting down trees, just anything and everything. So they're quite heavily, I guess, indebted to the nobles.
Sounds delightful for France. Yeah. Anything that weakens them, I'm totally in favor of. Clearly, I guess we'll align a bit more with the aristocrats for just now. So as well, I have heard there is a new military system going on. The way that army maintenance is completely changed.
Yeah, this is probably one of our more new systems. Recently, we've added a new system basically where all manpower is first organized in the provinces. You have population, and so various estates or the state itself can recruit levies. The modifier would be the really out of place one. Is the best way I can describe it. Yep, there it is. So each of them takes some money and puts it towards the military. They then spend that money on recruiting troops, and then they also spend that money on training up the troops to have better skill and better quality. So generally, you can either have sort of estate-heavy armies where they're paying most of the cost. At the moment, the state pays no cost towards those noble levies, but we're sort of reviewing that. But generally, either the states pay the burden, or if you go to the other layers of the interface, which would be the button on the right there.
This one here?
Yep. I think 3 times to get to the final layer.
That one there?
Yeah. Or you can have the army recruit their own troops through like a conscription or volunteer service and have their own manpower. So it's basically, in this system, you either heavily align with the elites, or you reform away from them and sort of go for a phase of having to sort of move away from levies and recruit your own army and forces and have to invest in them to build up their skill. That all gets congregated to the national level, and then you pay for your entire manpower pool that you've recruited. You can also just take them out of the pool and put them on the map. Either way, you're paying for them in the pool or in the map. The main reason it's like a system is that all of this is integrated with the economy. So to train the troops, they have to buy military goods, which goes on the market, which means, there's supply and demand for military goods and all that. And all the costs, I guess, are real, and that they're really going to either nobles or they're going towards the military spending or wages. So it's completely integrated with the politics and the economy and rights, which decide, for example, how much money nobles are willing to spend towards it, also your own ability to recruit those armies comes from rights.
And you said there about military goods. What are those, and where can I find those then?
Yeah, so in 3.0 we have moved away from just having rural and urban goods, and now we have a whole set of trade goods. Each trade good is sort of a banner term or umbrella term for a bunch of smaller goods, like food, for example, is all your wheat, your fish, your livestock, and those are bought and sold on a global market, traded between provinces, and it's basically the linchpin of the entire economy, supply and demand. So military goods is one of the trade goods on the market, which is produced by industries, and yeah.
And so you need your military goods to be able to have your army, fire guns or use spears, or they wouldn't be very useful without some sort of equipment.
Yeah, basically, there's two industries, I believe, that produce military goods. There's cottage industry, which is like a rural good, and there's armaments industry, which is a urban industry. And both of those produce military goods, which your own armies will buy, and then spend that to basically create your maintenance costs.
So how would I increase the amount of military goods that I'm creating, so I maybe don't have to purchase so much from the global market or from my neighbors who I might want to conquer at some point?
The best way to describe it is that all goods are bought and sold on this market. They can be subsistent goods, which means they're only bought and trade within your own sector, which is all provinces that share a same owner and a same trade node. But either way, they're first sold to the market and then bought off the market. So basically, what you could do, for example, is if you're importing a lot of military goods and that's coming in at a cost, you could increase the amount of industrial property that you have, which is what the cottage industry and the armaments industry both use as the basis, like the size of their industry. And if you have a bigger industrial size, basically you'll have more urban labor, more urban goods, and then more output of military goods. Overall, the economy is generally self-balancing, so in that sense, you're not really investing directly into industries, you're more investing into the property that they use. So you don't really micromanage, for example, wheat or potato or fish and stuff. You provide farmland, which will allow more crops to be sold, some of which may be wheat.
I'm saying
So it's a bit more
it probably
indirect in that
wouldn't want to
sense.
be potatoes in 1356, but I do get
No,
where you're
yeah,
coming from. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and you can sort of buff up these industries if you wanted to micromanage it, you would be able to do that as well.
Yeah, that's generally a core concept of 3.0, is that we don't want to have everything be micro, and we don't want everything to be player controlled. We want things to sort of organically happen in the background, and for the player to be able to influence things in certain ways, but not directly dictate, I guess, how the economy will run. So, for example, you can invest to expand, like historically rules did, help expand the amount of farmland that's in use, or, for example, help build up cities, but they wouldn't, for example, micromanage the industries themselves. So it's also so as a player you don't have to, get into too much micro on the ground.
Yeah, the king isn't exactly lifting the first brick into place, other than for ceremonial reasons, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a good thing about 3.0 industry and trade, is that the reason it's even there, even if you can't interact with it, is that at an early stage we had much more simpler designs of the economy, but we basically realized they aren't very self-balancing and self-correcting, and that would lead to, it sort of would be extremely arbitrary. So there's all these different industries that all produce different goods and all sold in the market, all because it creates these natural flow-on effects where supply can increase, and maybe the prices drop, or demand can increase and the prices rise, and if the prices rise, that leads to more supply, and then it all corrects out, and you get sort of a normal baseline. So it's a self-correcting economy with the ability for the player to influence it in certain directions.
That sounds kind of neat, I gotta say. So
Yeah.
I noticed when I opened this UI as well, this is clearly very, very different. We
Yeah.
got with this artwork here. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with there being artwork in here. This is very strange. What's going on here?
That's some very fancy magic by our user interface artist. I'm definitely butchering this name. Pel Pel, Pew Pew. I don't know. He's Polish, and I'm probably going to slang for this later. But he's
Polish. I've
invested.
just come to understand that Polish names are not meant to be pronounced correctly by anyone who lives anywhere outside of Poland.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, so in 2.5, one of the main ways you interfaced with the systems was buildings, which were sort of lump sum investments. Main problem of them was that there were two things. One, they didn't scale. So a little province would cost the same amount as a massive province to build a certain industry. And for example, roads had to go through this whole complex UI just to get them to be dynamic. And the other problem is they costed just money. Like that money wasn't put into the economy to then buy goods, increase industrial demand or anything like that. It's just arbitrary. So in 3.0, you've sort of done away with those fixed chunk buildings, which is definitely a deviation from what EU4 is built on, which is those, I'm going to pay $100 and buy some, granary or some sort of fixed building.
Yeah.
Instead, we've got in that interface two things. The first is infrastructure, which is a series of... Best way I can describe it is internally, there are a bunch of units, and a number of those units makes a rank, and then that rank gives you a bonus. So, say if you want to build irrigation rank 3, you build a bunch of units. You don't really have to worry about how much. The system calculates that within the province. And then you build up to that next rank, and then you gain bonuses for that. So it's sort of like how a province goes tall, like you
Right.
build higher irrigation to get more crop output, or you build more amenities to get a bigger city. That's the top half of the UI. The second half is our tax system, which is a second whole other thing. I'm not sure which one you want to tackle first there.
Up to yourself. It's both magic to me. It makes a little difference which one we go with first. I'm going to get confused regardless.
So in the top half, best way to describe it is infrastructure is usually first maintained by the elites, and with the player being able to invest. And later game, if you decide to completely defund the elites, you're going to have to take the role of funding that infrastructure because they won't fund it themselves anymore. They don't have the power, and they're not really willing to do so. So, in that sense, it's sort of like it's a balancer on politics, basically. Early game feudal realms will often have a lot of these just self-maintained. Like, for example, burghers love funding amenities because it's their city. But late game, you're going to have to take up the cost, and to do so, you're going to have to... It's very expensive, so you're going to have to tax, the peasants and the residents pay for the infrastructure. That's sort of how they invest infrastructure. It's indirect. They pay taxes, and you keep it going. So, generally during the game, you'll be building a lot of infrastructure. A lot of them's familiar to 2.5. Capital buildings is the regional capitals.
Yeah.
Amenities is your urban buildings that increased urban gravity, which is sort of gone. Instead, there's just urban housing, which is, if you don't have the housing, people start dying. So housing is how you maintain a high urban population without relying on migration to keep replacing people who die, basically. As historically, high amenities meant you could keep a bigger city. Garrisons is like your local fortifications. Irrigation is your rural infrastructure, which players now can invest in. That wasn't a thing in 2.5.
Okay.
So that's a thing. And then pathing and harborage is very familiar. CE benefits, naval force limit.
And how do you invest in this kind of thing then?
So at the moment in 1.29, we're using a fancy thing called the select estate. So if you can see in the bottom right corner of the interface, there's province selection. So you click that, click the little X that has not been localized. And if you see on the map, there's a pin there. That indicates the province has been selected.
Right.
Then if you go to your decision menu, there is a decision called construct buildings.
Oh, lovely
So
new UI on this. I like it.
Yeah, more of that magic. So yeah, you got to design a project, and that's where you can choose any sort of infrastructure you want, and you can improve it up to a rank, or an option that's we've totally got to fix. You can improve by a number of ranks in all selected provinces. So you can just do it in 1, you can do it in 10, you can do it in 100. So if you want to improve your entire realm to roads level 2, It doesn't mean that you've got to go through a hellish menu for 200 provinces. It means you select them all. There's a decision there to toggle how many provinces you select at once as well.
That is amazing. I used to hate building roads. Alright, so I want the pathing in Paris to be a bit better. Well, at the moment, pathing is what rank? That's in... Where do we see the pathing one? Is that in Harbourage?
It's the middle infrastructure and the bottom half.
Aha, there you are. Pathing is currently level 5.
Yeah, I've still got to do a lot of balancing there in terms of the amount of wealth available to elites to be able to fund this infrastructure. So the starting values might be a bit imbalanced.
Fair enough. Well, clearly we got to improve it to rank 6 then. And prepare to construct. You can improve by however many ranks. Prepare to construct. It's going to cost that much money. That's expensive. What's parallelism?
So when you can submit a project, basically a project is a amount of labor and amount of goods you have to purchase. So that's what your cost will be. It's deducted instantly and then put aside. Those costs may actually change if the prices go up and down, but basically you're putting money aside, you buy a bunch of goods, and the construction system will try and buy that many goods every year. So parallelism is how many goods you're buying at once.
Okay.
If you go really low, it'll build slow, but you won't have any big spikes in demand. While if you build 100 pathing across the entire realm at 10 parallelism, you may crash the entire industrial market and cause a price surge. So it's
economic warfare can cause a price surge in certain things, and my enemies will hate that if you understand the system enough, I guess. Maybe possible.
Well, they might be able to sell you those goods that they're producing for cheap, that you're now buying for an expensive amount. So that might help them.
Also could be a thing. Well, as I'm just doing one province, I guess parallelism isn't going to work so well.
Well, I mean, generally in just one province, you could probably put it higher because, like, it's not going to be a huge amount of demand unless you're building, say, to rank 6, trying to get all those units done at once. From rank 1, sorry. Like, if you're building like a number of ranks, that means a lot of units for that.
Right.
But yeah, if you don't have the cost, you won't be able to submit the project. But if you have the cost, then it'll launch a modifier.
Alright, let's construct a project. Now we've got enough money. Oh, we're also going to go bankrupt.
UI and then back out.
Alright. If I do that and then go back out. There we go. Construct a project. We're going to have some lovely pathing going on here soon then.
So there's a little green modifier there. It's one of the modifiers for the province.
This one here. Ongoing construction.
Yeah, so still a lot of localization. For example, exactly what goods it's buying. There's like layers we can do there, but yeah, it'll buy that number of units basically. So that's what infrastructure is. It's a number of units that equal another rank. There's a sort of poorly localized layer. I think it's the 4th one of the house symbol, which is in the middle left.
The
that one, actually,
one,
right there.
This one, terrain.
To the right of it.
Infrastructure. They?
That's it.
Of course.
Yep. So you can see there, we've got to localize that fancy like we've done the rest, but you can see the number of units it's got left till the next rank up. And it's got inherent decay as well. That's another big reason that we did the system, is that in 2.5, nothing would ever decay. Once it's there, it's there. In this system, if no one's maintaining it, the infrastructure will crumble away.
Oh, I can imagine that being quite interesting when you just come out of a war, perhaps. You want to, recover your nation. You've take some money away from maintenance, and a bit of a downward spiral after that.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you're the one now maintaining it. Elites are probably more resilient in that fact. They'll keep it together more. But if you're the one funding it and you can't fund it, then it's just going to decline. So
MEIOU Taxes 3.0 is huge, as is this video. So I'm going to put a cut in here. Check back tomorrow for the rest of this little recording session that I've done with Fire Kahuna, where we're going to be talking about taxes and how to interface with it, and also trade, and a lot more besides. So check back tomorrow for that and learn more about MEIOU Taxes 3.0. I will see you then.